Call to order the September 21st, 2017 meeting of the Sebastian City Planning and Zoning Committee. Please, let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Roll call, please.
Mr. Roth?
Here.
Mr. Simmons?
Present.
Ms. Cottenberg?
Here.
Mr. Carter?
Present.
Mr. Reyes?
Here.
Mr. McManus?
Here.
Mr. Kieselbosch?
Here.
Mr. Hugan?
Here.
Mr. Alvarez?
Here.
Thank you.
We have a full contingent this evening.
Yes.
For the announcements, I'd like to ask our new planning director to introduce herself. Ms. Lisa Frazier, please.
Thought it did, but it doesn't.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Frazier, and I am the new Community Development Director for the City of Sebastian, and I am very pleased to be here. I am actually very excited to be here. I have been in the planning field for almost 30 years now. I am a certified planner. I worked for almost 10 years with Kimley Horn down here in Vero Beach, so I'm very familiar with Indian River County and the City of Sebastian. In fact, I helped to put together your Greenways Master Plan with the city of, or with the county. For the last few years, I've had my own consulting firm, and I've also been the director for another CRA in Brevard County. I live in South Brevard, and I'm open to any questions, and my door is always open. Mr. Roth has already come in to say hello, and please stop by anytime.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
we are delighted to have you as well. And obviously, she became a certified planner when she was 14 years old.
Yes.
Thank you.
You have all had the opportunity to review the minutes of our August 17th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, we will call for a motion to accept the minutes as provided.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of August 17th, 2017, as stated, or as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Okay. We have a public hearing this evening regarding a site plan for Dollar General.
Madam Chairman, this is the new site plan for Dollar General Chester's Gap, a 13,144 square foot retail building at 727 Sebastian Boulevard. It's in zoning district PUDC, Plan Unit Development Commercial.
Thank you. Have any of the commissioners had any ex parte communication on this matter? No. Thank
No.
you. Could we swear in our applicant, please?
And all persons who intend to provide testimony, including city staff, please rise. And raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the factual statements and factual representations which you're about to give or present during this public hearing will be truthful and accurate? Yes. Thank you.
If our applicant will please make his presentation regarding the project.
I'm not sure which one to use. Great. We'll raise this up a little bit. Good evening. My name is William Anderson. I'm with Hanlex Development, the developer of this project, and my address is 1000 Color Place, Apopka, Florida. We are very happy to be working with the City of Sebastian, and we are pleased to be presenting this development to you all tonight. Especially, and many of you, the Lost Power last week will agree, I'm glad to be in air conditioning, and our thoughts are with Puerto Rico and the islands that are affected. I'm going to take you through a short presentation this evening and touch on some important topics and considerations that have gone into this development. And I'm here with the engineer to address any specific concerns or questions you may have. Some of the important topics I'm prepared to discuss tonight are the proposed use, site layout and geometry, driveway access points, traffic generation and circulation, landscaping, and building architecture. Before we get started this evening, I'd want to take time and thank the staff for all their work to getting us to this point. Their guidance has been great, and they made the opportunity to be here tonight possible, so thank you very much. And we're looking forward to working with Lisa as the project moves forward. From a site layout perspective, the existing previously designed and approved access points will be utilized off of both Sebastian Boulevard and Fleming Street. The site will have perfect site circulation with loading and deliveries being made behind the building and the parking for the customers located mostly along the front of the building. As a corner commercial outparcel to the Chester's Gap PUD, the site also has existing utility and stormwater infrastructure in place that we will be utilizing. The board will also find beautiful landscaping, adequate parking, and pedestrian access provided, and both public and emergency vehicles access standards are met. A little bit about the architecture. In the design of this store, we have the objective of creating an inviting and welcoming space that belongs to a commercial neighborhood store, while at the same time complementing the architectural features that the City of Sebastian inspires. The sloped roof theme of the building is consistent with the city's architectural guidelines, and many features enhance the building and break up the mass, as you will see, including varying roof heights, windows with shutters, and a central cupola in the front. The building materials are contrasting with a layered look of stucco and stone features from top to the bottom. These changes in materials and texture reinforce the inviting qualities of the building with the functional quality of providing shade to our customers and definition. The results of the collaborative efforts between the professionals working on this project have resulted in, 1, a proposed use that is consistent with code and thereby in harmony with city's vision. 2, architectural features and site development standards that meet or exceed both state and local criteria. And 3, an infill development located inside the City of Sebastian where we are proud to be. We are very pleased with these results. Thank you, and the engineer and I are here with any further questions or concerns. Thank you.
Open it up for questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Staff presentation.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for a thorough presentation, an initial start into the project. I'm basically going to be reviewing some points out of our staff report. So this is a project that is going to be located in the Chester's Gap PUD, and as such, per our code book, this site plan does have to get approved by City Council, and that's why this is not a quasi-judicial hearing before you, but a recommendation to City Council because of the zoning, the PUD zoning. We had different layers to review the project. This is in the 512 overlay district. We had to make sure that we met the PUD requirements and the Chester's Gap requirements from their conceptual plan, comp plan, and land development code. And we do feel we'll discuss the conditions, but besides a couple of conditions, we feel that this project meets all of those requirements. The setbacks, there were some PUD setbacks, which were a little bit different. This has an underlying zoning of commercial general. So even though it's zoned PUD commercial, you establish your underlying zoning for that, either commercial limited, commercial general. This is commercial general. But it does have PUD specific setbacks, 40 feet along the perimeter. And since this is a perimeter lot, they did have to have 40 feet on 2 sides, their north and east side, which they have met. So they've met their setbacks. They have included the required loading area, which will be to the rear of the building, as shown on the site plan. If you noticed or picked up on the survey, this was, when the Exxon was built, this was one lot. They came in a few years after the Exxon was built and divided the lot we at one time had a Sherwin-Williams store that was going to be built on that lot. The site plan came before you. It was not built. But there was some established easements because it was 2 lots and that Sherwin-Williams was the Exxon needed easements through the Sherwin-Williams lot. Those easements are shown on the site plan, but they're not going to be necessary for this development. But those easements will be through the final plat, will be replatted and removed. So we didn't have to do any type of recorded documents to dissolve those easements. That was, just speaking of that and the final plat, when the Wave School, the school on Wave Street, the charter school, came in for some modifications, it was through that site plan, if you remember, in 2013, that we discovered that as these sites were being built in Chester's Gap, they weren't being platted in. And there were some catch-up plats that we needed to get all of the sites, the lots, to be into the Chester's Gap, so they all contributed to the master stormwater plan. They were all maintaining the utility plan. This is the last lot to be final platted into the Chester's Gap, and that is a requirement that we're requesting before CO. But they have already applied for the final plat. We are working through the review, but they do have to plat into the Chester's Gap subdivision. Their stormwater, and they're hooking into the master utility system. But those easements will go away when we plat. They have, I think, designed a really nice building for such a large building. We had some tweaks, so we had a couple of revisions, but they've added the cupola, some nice fenestrations. The rooftop equipment is going to be on the rooftop. It's by a parapet wall in the back, so they have met all of those requirements of our overlay districts. And I apologize if I may be skipping, but I'm just going through pages of our staff report. They did submit a formal traffic impact analysis for the additional trips that this project will generate. That analysis was reviewed by the Indian River County Traffic Engineering Department, and they have approved that. So they feel with the additional trips that the turn lanes and the timing of the intersection, nothing needed to be revised with that aspect. They are saving all but 3 of those beautiful live oaks on the property, especially the ones along Fleming Street. The ones in the rear are very, very close to the property line. They actually do belong. There's one back there, but the rest belong to the Elks Club. And as you can see, if you read the staff report, we are requiring them to coordinate with the Elks Club to allow them to go on their private property, to put some tree protection barriers around them when they start demolition and construction. And also, they are going to have to trim some of the overhang for that back-loading area and travel lane. And we are requesting that they have a certified arborist trim those trees to make sure they're just not chopped off by the contractor. The master stormwater has been developed by the original civil engineer to accommodate all up to 80% maximum build-out of the Chester's Gap. They have already connected with St. John's to do a modification to that permit. It meets all. They are going to be connecting into the master stormwater, and I do have their St. John's modification permit, so that has been taken care of. The couple other things on page 8, some additional considerations. The demolition of the existing gas station will certainly be also, they have additional permits, not only our demolition permit, but through the health department for the building itself, and of course DEP for the removal of the gas tanks. The gas station has been sitting empty for a few years, but they were required to empty the gas tanks, so there's no gasoline sitting in them. But they still have to, they'll be getting a DEP permit. We just want to make sure that when those gas tanks are removed, DEP requires some soil testing. We would like copies of those so that we also can verify and put with the file that there hasn't been any gas leaks and that those soils are okay to continue on with construction. The only thing that basically was kind of a holdup is and I think it's just a timing that they've been busy too, but we did not receive the final approval from the fire department. And as you can see, we kind of made that a condition on one of ours. We would prefer to get that fire department approval before we take this site plan to City Council. And when looking over some of our conditions, we realized that there were 2 other ones, the written authorization from the Elks, and also they were deficient in a few of the 22, 24-inch shrubs and 38, 36-inch shrubs, that if they could possibly make that revision to the landscape plan. We would possibly revise kind of our when we get to the motion part after your questions, that if we could get those 3 conditions done before we take the site plan to City Council, This way, on their resolution, there would be only 2 remaining conditions. We feel this is a better presentation to City Council for them to approve their site plan, and we would like those 3 items to possibly be done before City Council meeting. And with that, as you can see, staff recommends approval. We included as the very last paragraph on our recommendation page, the section in the PUD does state that you should recommend, you have to make a recommendation to City Council that you have found that the site plan does comply with the conceptual development plan, the comprehensive plan, and the land development code, which is why we did include the conceptual plan of the PUD for your reference, and you can clearly see that the property, which is that property number 1, it is to be commercial, and this certainly is a commercial development that would comply with their conceptual PUD plan for Chester's Gap.
Okay, thank you. And now, questions from our commissioners.
Yes, I have a couple questions and a statement. First, I'd like to thank the applicants for putting together a good looking building for the proposed site over there. It looks very nice. And also for increasing business here in the city of Sebastian as well. One question I do have, do you have anticipated tenants for these other two areas here?
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Yes, we do. We have a couple interested parties. We actually handle brokerage through a third party, but they have several interested tenants, and it's just kind of a factor of once it starts going with construction, then a lot of interest seems to happen because tenants need to schedule about 6 to 8 months out when they occupy a building. But we have several interested parties, and we're really looking forward to having multiple tenants there.
Okay, good. Thank you. Here's my only other comment, and it's not. I don't think it's really applicable here, but I know we have the concept of the fishing village theme. If there might be something nautical that could be incorporated into that. I know a lot of the businesses have used like the pilings with the rope for cordoning off, like parking area and things of that nature on the sidewalk. But it's just a comment. I know it's not required in this section, but we're trying to keep that in the Riverside District.
Understood, definitely. We would love to include a nautical theme of some sort. That's a great idea. Actually, knowing this area really well, it's really nice to come into an area that's one of the first, national monuments and national conservation areas in the U.S. at Pelican Island. So, yes, we really like to keep with the natural theme.
Yeah, thank you.
Couple small things. Forgive me for my voice. On a parking calculation, right now it is a retail use. And if they hire some dentists over there next door, so that's a professional, medical professional use. So the parking calculation will change.
Yeah, so they submitted it with the parking calculations for all retail. And now if there was a medical office to go in there or a restaurant, we would have to recalculate parking based on what would be required for that. Restaurants, of course, is just your seating area. What we did for the Dollar General area, and the code does allow that parking is just calculated for the public areas accessible by the public. So they were able to, we subtracted their storage area and their office area. We did not do that with the other 2 units, so there may be a few parking spaces that could be, played around with. But yes, we do, when they come in, we do calculate parking.
I just want to bring to your attention, there'll be some change there. So the second thing is I don't think they're changing any storm drainage system. They're using the existing one. When
Correct.
you say they need a modification from St. John's, so it's already there. So what kind of modification they need?
I think they may have, because there's definitely some more impervious area on this site. We were taking the Exxon station plus a vacant lot, so the impervious area has increased. I think if it was just to be cautious, I do know that they have sent the plans to St. John's. I have a letter from them approving the site plan.
I just have a comment. I'm glad to see something very nice go on that corner because the Exxon station's been vacant for 3 or 4 years, and so I'm glad to see something happening there.
I'll echo the comments too. I really think this is going to be a big plus to the community to have it on that corner. A couple of questions I had. I'll echo what Mr. Carter said. I know this isn't in the actual riverfront district, but given the fact now is an opportunity to do something with the nautical theme. I think that would be very advantageous. There's a couple of them on US 1, and it doesn't take up a lot of space, but it does add a lot to the appeal. And I also know it's not in a code. We've been working on it, short-staffed, and Dory has done a Herculean job keeping up with everything. It's been on our back burner, so if there's any way you can add that in on the front somewhere, that would be greatly appreciated. I think it would add to the project. It is a very attractive-looking building, excellent with all the roof lines, the cupola. That added a lot to it. I just have a couple of minor questions, and probably this is totally answerable. There's no fire suppression system in here. Is that because, and maybe Dory can answer that, is that because of city codes don't require it, or?
No, but that's more of a structural, through building code and fire department review, so I'm certain that their building permits will come in with whatever fire safety measures are required by the building code. So we're just reviewing it for land development. Yes, a floor plan. I know that maybe there is a little bit of detail in those architectural drawings, but they were getting ready to submit their building permit. But that will be reviewed by Wayne Esseltine in the building department, and certainly they will have to comply before that permit's issued.
As usual, I jumped the gun. Too far ahead. The other is just a traffic concern. I was over there twice, and the curb cuts on Fleming are not going to be moved. Is that correct?
Correct.
It looks like it's going to be a real tight in and turn to get into this parking area, and I think signage in that area is going to be really key. And I know the city doesn't control that, so I'm just bringing it up as far as the developer and site engineer goes, so that it can be directed properly, so that we don't have people. I know first time in is going to be an issue, but once we're past the grand opening, it shouldn't be a problem. But that was one thing I saw as a possible issue, is traffic. Well, the question was answered about the tenants. Basically, those are my questions. I thought the plan was well thought out and well documented in the manuscript that we got through here. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. And just to answer one of your questions, the driveway access points have been designed for a large truck. It's actually a WB60 truck, they call it, but it's one of the large trucks that Dollar General uses to deliver to many of their stores. And also the curb cut off of Sebastian, that was designed for a fuel truck. So it's actually large, it has a good radius, and everything fits. It's actually a really nice design. It's a circular, the delivery in the back, parking for the customers in front. It's a very nice circular design.
Yes, I saw that, and I saw where you had the delivery door in the back too.
Yes, sir.
That's good as far as the traffic pattern.
It's and the customers won't even notice when there's a delivery happening. It's great. It's what engineers and developers really love to see, is when a site, not all sites can be that way, but this one worked out well.
As long as fire department is okay with it, that's fine with me then.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Reyes.
I got a couple questions. I'll start with the survey. On the survey that's submitted separate from your site plan, it is, the legal description is the overall parcel, both lots. The call at the last call is missing a call on it. On your site plan, on your cover page, your legal description describes the entire property, and then it lesses out the vacant piece and lesses it out again. So I see you're developing both parcels, so I'm curious there. It says it's per title commitment, the legal. So then I see on the survey included with your site plan in the back that it is the same legal shown on your cover page. So the title commitment's only showing a legal description for the gas station parcel. It lesses out the other parcel twice.
Interesting. We will definitely look into it. That shouldn't be the case. It is for both parcels, and we'll definitely look into that and revise it so it's correct.
Mr. Reyes, because when you brought that up, that was one of my comments, review comments that was sent to them. And so I apologize, I missed this, but if you look on the survey that's attached to the site plan, I made sure that the legal description was used on both, and it is on this, is the same as the cover sheet. So if you approve the site plan, we'll make sure that it's the survey that's included in your site plan packet.
The
And
one
I
that's included
apologize.
separate, that is the overall
It appears
site,
that the separate one was the one was before the revision where they did change that.
which is describing it per deed.
Yes, and I had them change that to be the same as what was on the cover sheet and per the title commitment, and that is on the one that's attached with the site plan set. They are both matching.
Yeah, that deed also is missing the final call to the point of closure.
Okay.
It's given a distance there, but no bearings or anything on it. The other thing I wanted to ask is, yeah, it's a lot of impervious surface all of a sudden on here. I know that on a couple other site plans we've looked at in this area that we've tried to use some pervious pavers or pavement. Did you look into any of that by any chance?
Good evening. My name is Rick Kreitmeyer, Z Development Services, 708. We're in Orlando, off of East Colonial. The question is about the pervious pavers, pervious pavement.
Pervious pavement.
That's not something we looked at initially with this, knowing that we were under the 80% required for the overall parcel. We felt like it was adequate, 5% less than what actually was proposed for these two parcels combined. If that's something that you'd like us to look into, we can. It does become more of a maintenance issue as far as keeping up with it after the fact, because there's a lot of fines that get into the pervious pavement that it won't be as pervious, let's say 5 and 10 years from now, unless the maintenance is done really well. That's what we've come to find
I
out.
understood that from previous, the maintenance on it is
It's
a
very,
big cost.
it's very
I
difficult.
was curious if it's looked at in these areas.
It can be with the sandy soils, but at this point, we have not looked at that, no.
I'd like to just clarify for the record, too, not to totally correct the gentleman, but the underlying zoning, commercial general, it is an 80% impervious, but there is a specific requirement in a PUD for 75% impervious. This site plan did meet it. It was 74.9, and the open space is required. But I did want to throw that in for the formal record.
Okay, thank you.
My only comment,
I'm sorry, I wasn't done. My other question is, they're showing a sidewalk crossing back to the sidewalk. I was trying to see what that existing sidewalk out there elevations are on the survey, and I didn't see that. It's one of the parking spaces, and I thought it was a flume at first, but I think it's a crosswalk design, so I'm just curious if that meets ADA there. It seems like it might be from that parking area up there, a ramp coming back down. So I was trying to look on the survey to see the elevations in that area. Probably right where near the Exxon kiosk sign is now, so it looks like it might be like a 22 elevation there, so it should be fine. That was my only other comment, adding that you're gonna come off of the walk into the property there. I'm happy to see this being developed. Actually, I did have one other question. Was there been a risk assessment done on this property, an environmental risk assessment? And you said that you will require an EPA a report of maybe contaminants on the site. It is a gas station that's been there for quite some time.
We received a geotechnical survey report and a Phase 1 report. We had discussed with them with possibly doing a Phase 2, but based on the time and the money, we were confident that when the demolition permit went through and the DEP permits for those tank removals, that based on those testing that DEP would also require, that as long as we received those and verified there were no gas leaks and the soils were okay, we were good with that instead of a Phase 2 environmental study.
It takes a long time sometimes for those to go through. I mean, that site could sit forever, even longer, trying to get through this. So that's why I was asking if you did do a risk assessment on it.
Yes, sir. Great question. Yes, it's immediately pretty much within putting the contract, signing our contract. The first thing we did was environmental, of course, seeing the gas station there. And the owner actually did a tank closure report. As soon as the gas station closed, within a month, they did a tank closure report through FDEP. They followed all the steps, as well as monitoring through the years. So it's been monitored. It was closed properly, drained of all the gasoline, monitored, no leakage in the soil. Everything looks great. Now, of course, we could always open it up, but that's through a tank or a tank contractor, and they have to get permitting through FDEP and follow their steps as well. So that third-party contractor would definitely determine right away if there's any leaking beyond what's already been tested. But that phase one environmental came back clean, for no further recommendation to go to phase two.
Great. Sounds like you got a good site.
Yes, sir. And many gas station owners do not follow through with that. So we're very happy that they did.
Thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you.
My only comment is that it's a great addition to the corner on one of the major streets. And I think you're doing a really nice job on the building for that corner. I have one question, though. Had you ever considered, from planning or whatever, hooking the parking lot with the parking lot on the property to the east, so you'd be able to traverse from one to another without going out on 512?
Yes, with the Elks Lodge there. We are actually in discussions regarding the tree barriers with the Elks Lodge, and that was actually one of our first questions because for a commercial site condition, we would like that circulation. So we are actually going to talk to them about that, and it's in the middle of talks, and we're going to propose that at our cost even to perhaps make a curb cut, a little bit of improvements, but of course it's just in talks, so we can't really design for it yet. But the city will be the first to know if that should go forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
That would certainly be a consideration if a restaurant or a medical office came in and they needed to do a shared parking plan. At that point, too, that'd be the open option to get the parking that would be needed to connect with the Elks Lodge parking area.
Mr. Alvarez?
No, I'm fine. I'm just happy that I'm going to have something like that there. Thank you.
Mr. Simpson?
And I'll follow up on with his comments.
Okay.
It's great.
Okay, and my comments are, yay, hooray, it's my neighborhood, I'm so happy. Okay. I will open the floor to anyone who would like to speak in favor of this development. Seeing no member of the public here, we'll move on to asking if there is anyone here who opposes the development. Seeing no member of the public here in opposition, are there any issues that the applicant wishes to respond to that you have not already?
No, there's not.
Thank you. Anything from staff to enlighten us further?
Just want to recommend approval, but based on some revisions that we kind of talked about, not necessarily revisions, but the conditions that are listed on page 9, staff is going to suggest that you make a motion that the condition number 1, 2, and 4 is complied with before the site plan goes before City Council. So I don't know if that would necessarily be a part of your recommendation of the site plan, because we wanted to get those items completed before City Council. And then a second motion would be to recommend to City Council the approval of the site plan with condition number 3 and 5, and that you find the site plan to be in compliance with the conceptual development plan, comprehensive plan, and land development code.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments from the commissioners? Any discussion? Okay, the chair will call for a motion.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion that we make a recommendation to City Council to accept the new site plan for Dollar General Cheshire's Gap 13,144 square foot retail building at 727 Sebastian Boulevard, with the recommendations 1, 2, and 4, the recommendations of staff be included. Now, we should make a second motion for the other one, though, right?
Right.
So, okay.
Included prior to,
Prior to recommendation to the city council.
okay. Do we have a second to that motion?
I will second.
Okay, well, we'll second.
Okay.
And I apologize to step in, if we can tweak that, so the first motion would not be a recommendation to city council.
Okay,
So we're just
yeah.
going to make that motion that those 3 conditions are met before we take the site plan to city council. And then your second motion would be the recommendation.
I amend my first motion.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
And the second agrees to the amendment?
Certainly.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kieselbosch,
Yes.
Ms. Cottenberg,
Yes.
Mr. Roth,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
Mr. Carter.
Yes.
Your motion passes.
Thank you.
Go
No.
build it.
Now we need a second motion after the 3 items have been met to recommend to council that this be approved. Can we have that motion? Mr. Mover?
Madam Chairman, I'll move that we accept the recommendation to the city council for the new site plan for the Dollar General Chester's Gap, 13,144 square foot retail building at 727 Sebastian Boulevard, with staff recommendations of 3 and 5.
A second?
And the paragraph.
Oh, and the paragraph below.
Just to clarify, can I suggest that, that you recommend that to the city council that the development plan and preliminary plat, that they comply with the conceptual development plan, comprehensive plan, the land development code, and all the criteria in Articles 9 through 16 of the land development code?
Okay, I'll amend my motion.
Okay. Adding that to the motion, we're calling for a second.
Aye. I'll second that.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Kieselbosch,
Yes.
Mr. Roth,
An emphatic yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
Mr. Carter,
Yes.
Ms. Cottenberg,
Yes.
Mr. McManus,
Yes.
Mr. Alvarez.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion carries.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Good luck with your development.
Thank you, sir.
Just a side comment, I hope you can see fit to somehow possibly include some of the architectural tweaks we mentioned about the rope and including some kind of nautical look to it with some posts in front. That would be greatly appreciated, and staff can certainly help you out with that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, our next item of business this evening is to continue our discussion regarding the future development of vacant parcels along the east side of Indian River Drive. And in our packet, we had a wonderfully colorful map and a nice memorandum. So this is, we're going to have this as the form of an open discussion. And if you would like me to start with it, in our discussion previously, we noted that many of the parcels along Indian River Drive are either wholly owned as they are on that side or adjoined to parcels on the other side of the road, and many of them either through accretion or otherwise, would no longer actually be buildable as they stand. And that seems to be a disadvantage to the owners of that property and hinders currently what, under our current rules and regulations, a good and healthy development of the area. Therefore, we are here to look at some other options that might allow the owners of those properties to do something previously unthought of or unpermitted. So here we go.
I have one suggestion.
Okay.
I think that making any changes structurally or setbacks or any type of zoning and whatnot, I think they'd be opening up the city to unbelievable lawsuits. But I thought about something on how you could keep the view of the river. And say you've got, I think the setback's 5 feet. So you got a 5-foot setback on one side, and the guy next door has got a 5. So you've got 10 feet. So you make a recommendation that nothing be placed in that 10 feet except grass. Can't have trees, you can't have shrubs, you can't have fences, you can't have architectural features. And you can't park a boat and trailer there or a car there. Now what this would do is if you're walking along the sidewalk or driving, 10 feet between every structure, you'd have a pretty good view of the river. And it wouldn't hurt the property owners at all. You might have to adjust the landscaping ordinance a little bit because you wouldn't be landscaping that section. And I think that would help keep the view of the river open, which is primarily what we're trying to do, right?
What is the setback restriction in this area?
The CWR, it depends if it's, which is a mixed use, commercial, riverfront, residential. If it's a residential structure, it's 15 feet. So you would have 30 feet if there was 2 homes next to each other. If you have a commercial aspect to the structure, then you get a commercial setback of 5 feet. I think that's been one of the, with the bed and breakfast, is, of course, if you have a 50 or 60-foot wide lot and you have to have 15 feet side setbacks, they are adding a commercial aspect to the structure. Same with the aquaculture, the clamming aquaculture. They added just this garage that became the commercial distribution area, so they were able to use the commercial setbacks. And you tend then to get a larger building, plus with parking and now stormwater. So I know that that was one of the things that we thought maybe did we want to consider that even though it's a mixed use or the zoning district itself allows residential and commercial, did we want to address that? Because that does affect your setbacks.
I'm thinking what you're...
I understand, I'm only talking about the side setback, not the front or rear. And all you're doing is creating a clear view of the water between all buildings.
Now, in Article 5, there are some exemptions for mechanical equipment and your overhang. So those setbacks are for your walls, and the zoning code does allow for a 36-inch overhang into that setback area, which still wouldn't block that, but it does allow for your mechanical equipment.
You'd still have a clear view of at least 8 to 10 feet above the ground.
Yes, but it does allow for your AC equipment, your water pumps and things like that can also encroach into that setback up to 36 inches. So would that be something you also wanted to change to not allow that equipment?
I think what he's asking for is going to require creating easements between these lots on every one of them and taking the land from these people, just like you do for the drainage easements right now that we're not allowed to put even fences into. So I think you're going to have more trouble with this. So I think we just need to try to restrict the type of building we're going to put on there.
I possibly don't know as much about it as you, but
you would require it. You would need to have
you're not
easements
taking
between
any
these lots.
land, you're not changing
You
these
are
side
taking it by not
setbacks.
allowing them to do anything with it. You're taking their property.
Well, it's the same as if you have a landscaping ordinance that takes their property.
They do.
Well, I thought the whole thing over, and that's the only positive thing I can come up with. Thank you.
But on that particular subject, if you have and identified a couple of little pockets in there where you could cluster some type of development of, little kiosks or something like that, the owner would still retain ownership of the land, and they would lease it, so therefore they would have the opportunity to work with the leasee to set it up, whatever goes on that property that meets with what we're defining we're looking for. So the owner would have control over it and could make sure that it doesn't get in their line of sight or what they deem their line of sight. That was one answer I thought to that as far as solving that particular issue, because it is going to be a concern. And when you look at the houses along there, they're not right tight up against each other, and some of the areas are pretty wide open. And if you look at the other side of the street, that was where I saw some opportunities, where the land was a little bit deeper, where you could put something in. My thought on that, I was thinking of something more along a sidewalk type of thing where, as people are walking by, might be a coffee, cookies, sunglasses, memorabilia, caps, T-shirts, that sort of a thing along there to get people to come by, but cluster it into one, maybe two areas. And next to that, a park where you'd have maybe a table with some attached chairs so they don't disappear. Maybe even a fenced area. It could be an area that is lower down from the sidewalk, so it's more at lagoon level also. There's a lot of opportunities. There's some land there that's bigger that you could do that with. But you'd have to find those, and I didn't bring those notes with me, I'm sorry. I left them behind. I could have given you some street addresses because I've walked that area.
If I can put my oar in the water as well. My impression of taking a look at this was not so much that we make huge changes, but that we allow something in addition to what already might be permitted for people who have some land that nothing we currently permit would fit on. And I kind of always have in the back of my head this idea of what is the highest and best use for any particular property. And frankly, parking your boat or your jet ski or whatever is probably not the highest and best use for a lot of properties that we see that being done on. There could be things that are more attractive and more beneficial to the community and more profitable to the owner of the property. And I'm not saying that we must do these things or that the owner of the property must do them. But I think if we can open up some options, we might encourage some additional business. And as we were speaking last time a little bit about the kiosk idea, and I mentioned earlier to Mr. Roth, if we can approve a shed to park your boat in, I don't understand why we can't approve some well-built, structurally sound, walk-up kiosks that might only be open on weekends or might not, depending on the business, and have wonderful, secure shutters that come down and lock up tight when you're not open for business. Wouldn't require parking because it's a walk-up business. We have a beautiful walking area, and not that anybody has to do that. They don't have to do that, but I think if they have a small piece of land, they should be allowed to do it if they want to. And that's just my opinion, but I think that we're the ones who could control the minimum square footage, the maximum square footage, the height of the building, the quality of the structure. We could determine all of that. Am I wrong?
I think We do have some parking regulations for walk-up restaurants, but if, and Lisa could maybe help, this is just throwing out some ideas. If you were to put a kiosk under a certain size, so that we don't get somebody that still builds a 1,500 square foot kiosk, that now we're saying you don't need
Right.
parking, but if something small, 200, 300 feet, that strictly is walk-up, that then you get the exemption to parking, so we don't have to worry about St. John's and all. But what if you did sell something from that kiosk that I might drive to the riverfront just to go to your kiosk? Where would I park? Am I now using somebody else's private parking to visit your kiosk? How do we get it so it's, for things like that, I'm just thinking, but there are some exemptions that we could say, hey, if you have a smaller kiosk, it's just strictly, whether it's retail or restaurant, you have an exemption from the parking. Which is
Well, and I
something we
think the
could do then.
parking is, we have public parking spaces all along the riverfront.
We do have the backup park,
And-
along the road, yes.
I think that,
Plus, you're not blocking the view then of the river.
Correct.
There may be some exemptions with landscaping. We may want some landscaping around the kiosk or things. Some of those lots too, that when we drove Lisa around and she had noticed that a lot of those properties had wetlands or were unbuildable based on the mangroves. So a small enough kiosk or up closer to the sidewalk, we can adjust that front yard setback to help encourage that type of structures.
anybody else have some thoughts on other things that we might do?
As we know, most of the parcels are very small parcels. With the present code, you cannot develop anything over there. So we have to create a separate district for that area, for those parcels. And then we could play with our new code, see what we could fit. As the applicant come with a thing, then we could review those things. That's the only thing we could do. And as for the setback, I think we should also work on a side setback, because the lots are 50 feet wide, some are 40 feet wide, so nothing you could do on that. So if you keep 5 feet setback, I agree with that thing on each property.
Which reminded me with the bed and breakfast, even
Yeah.
though it's a different setback for residential and commercial, there was also consideration if you were abutting an existing residential
Yeah.
use, and then the setback was larger also. So that would maybe be something we would need to consider.
I do think that if we were to permit something in a more creative nature, we need to be careful about good design and quality structures, and have perhaps some kind of criteria where you can put up building A, building C, or building D. But like you said, not the 15-foot metal shed with T-shirts hanging all over it.
Or 1,500 square feet.
Right, that too.
Yeah.
Which is typically what we do when we create a new zone or tweak these zones, is we would spend some time coming up with some requirements, or, some guidelines and some code for those zones. So we would create a zone for the east side of Indian River Drive there.
Or maybe something,
I'm sorry.
if you had a lot under a certain size, then we could kick you into some of these alternative structure use codes.
That's a really excellent idea.
And we're looking at fill. If I'm looking at this from the property or from the county, this plot, there's not a lot of lots that can be filled with fill rights to allow them to build something even bigger there. I see some of these. I'm assuming the green line is the parcel lines. They're almost all right along the edge of what's there now. I guess that's the mean high water line, I guess, for those areas. Now, near our boat ramp area, there's a big square out area that goes way out, and near, I guess, Salties. That's a submerged land easement for the dock. That was another thought that I had come up with, where we can have some submerged land easement, maybe a boardwalk connecting these lots, where, you can create this easement over the submerged lands. You probably get a grant from the federal lands for it for practically nothing, and you can add on to that piece of property where you can extend it by boardwalk out into the waterway another 10 feet maybe, to make that those kiosk sites interconnect. So I've seen some of that done maybe we can bring in some examples if we're going to continue to. I know when Mr. Dodd presented this to us, he wanted us to get through it right away.
Those
But
may,
realistically, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, there are several parcels that are for sale along there now, a couple of relatively good-sized ones. And that's the risk, that we face right now, is that they possibly may sell, which, then they'll control what they can do according to the building codes in that area, the Riverfront District. But, it will take some time, you're right, to do this, but we can't let that pressure us. But on the same hand, we should keep this moving along, I think.
Madam Chair, may I interject? When Dory brought this up this week, and again, I apologize, this is day 4, so I don't mean to step into anything that I don't have the background knowledge for, but Dory and I have been discussing this, and what I kept reiterating is that this sounds like a small area study. And I feel like you have expressed even more data, if you will, for me to go off of a small area study. I wasn't sure where this board was going with this thought, but I like where you're going with this thought now. And I have to compliment Dory in her thought that maybe this includes other small infill sites that are having a hard time getting redeveloped. I mean, that is always the challenge in an already platted town, and you have these non-conforming lots that can no longer develop to today's standards and their codes, and so what do you do with them? And so with your permission, I would like us to possibly explore doing a small area study of the east side of the Riverside Drive, along the river there. What can we do? What's the inventory? What are we even talking about? How many lots are even buildable or can be reused? And then even see within the area to the west side of Riverside, what's the inventory there? How many lots are appearing to be sitting there isolated and alone? This happened in the town that I live in, and I did the inventory there, where it was platted, sometime in the 40s, 30s, something to that effect. And then the town was incorporated in 52, and it was platted with 50-foot lots. But when it was incorporated in 52, the ordinance stated you had to have 100-foot buildable lot. Your lot had to be 100 feet. So consequently, over time, you have these isolated 50-foot lots, and everybody's saying, what do you do with those? Well, the answer was, if it could meet the setback requirements, you could go ahead and build it. We're talking single family, so that's an easy solution, much more easy than this solution. But I would encourage you to consider that, because yes, it's not an easy solution. And I actually love, you keep saying kiosks, but I encourage you to look at tiny houses, which are a big thing these days. I think we're almost thinking about that. And I also wanted to point out, that view sheds, preservation of view sheds and breezeways, which is what the one gentleman, I'm sorry, is that John, had been mentioning, and I read that also in the past notes, the preservation of that view shed and of the breezeway, the breezes from the river. There's precedence for that. So setbacks can be utilized as part of that, and that is something that would be applicable if we wanted to tweak, the zoning codes in those areas. That's my 3 cents I just wanted to throw out there.
I think that's probably the logical way to going. And I don't know, would your study involve finding out if any of the owners of the property would be interested in developing their lots, if they were or not? Or don't go there yet?
I'm not sure if you would like us to do that. I mean, of course, the scope of any kind of study can be whatever is to
Sometimes
value
it's hard to unring
city.
a bell, I understand that.
But initially, in small area studies, it's about gathering of data, what's existing. We also have to address sea level rise. I mean, it's something that is coming and is happening in our river, and of course, The Indian River Lagoon is right next to us, so we can get a lot of that information. But it would be interesting to see, what lots are buildable, what's the average size, what we would feel would need to be the minimum size. And right now, the minimum size is a 10,000 square foot buildable lot. So is that even, applicable to the majority of those parcels? I mean, I think we would want to start on what do we have? What's the inventory? What do we
I'd say
have?
that's a real good idea.
And then move forward with that. That's how I always start everything. What do I have? What's the existing conditions? And then we can make decisions.
I think that there's probably a consensus here that we would like to have that done. Does anybody here have any other, like, off-the-wall, wild, outside-the-box ideas that might...
Years ago, when I moved here, council had a study done for greenways and blueways studies. And being from down south, I love these water taxis and stuff, and I wanted to see some boardwalk out here with a water taxi to get me over to the state park. There may be restaurants over on that side eventually. You never know where these water taxis can interconnect. So I think the city's done some work, some of your footwork already. With this GIS report, I believe they gave us the owners' names and all that, and so you had some of your groundwork done for you already. So asking the owners if they want, I don't know how that goes about, but
Yeah, I know.
I think you would do that if you
yet.
sent out. I don't think we've given notice to any of the owners that we're looking at this yet.
No, this
So
is just
I
a-
think that would happen just by sending out notice to them that we're going to be looking at this. You're going to get them all in here, and they're all going to report as to what they think. So that's going to give you your answer there from the owners as to what they want to do. So once we get an idea of what we want to do and we advertise it, I think that's going to create all the owners' response. So that's my.
I think when we get to the point where we are working with the actual code and doing the strikeouts and underlines, at that point, we will be extra cautious, and even maybe before a public hearing, they'll send out letters to those affected property owners. So we'll definitely be sensitive to that. But once
Right.
we're at a point where we feel we have something to show them which way we're going down the road with.
Yeah.
And again, because we allow something doesn't mean you must do it. I just think it would, we're thinking about opening up some opportunities for some people, and that's never a bad thing.
And well, we've got zones now that we have variances for all the time. So, we can create those for that zone once they come in. We have to look at them all individually.
We make
eventually.
variances all the time.
I was able to go to a couple of days before the hurricane to the Florida American Planning Association that Lisa was involved with putting together. But one of the trips that I did, it was a 4-hour walking tour of DeLand. Oh my goodness, there were so many great planning ideas in that town. But a couple that I did want to mention that maybe it does affect or we could consider for these smaller lots too. They did a sculpture walk, which was maybe a cultural type of thing. So maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be a business or a kiosk, but involve the arts community, that these lots could be used for, again, for the walkers and to get people down in our riverfront. The other thing, they had a park that it was, I can't remember the name of it, but there was quite a few of these benches, all made out of concrete, but had the checkerboard chess tables in the concrete. I mean, even if we did a few of those on some of these lots and people could just sit there next to the river, playing chess and games, like a game table type of thing. It was I was glad I took the tour, but they had some ideas too that I thought we could incorporate into our riverfront and maybe on these smaller lots.
That's great.
That's funny you say that, because I've looked at other properties before to put a fountain with horses in it where people can, it's a wishing fountain, they can wish, and the monies from that fountain go to maintain that property. So we can put a wishing fountain out here with some sailfish and stuff on it, some tarpon and snook, and just let people throw their money into it. And the money the city's gonna generate from that is awesome, so.
Yeah, it might be enough to keep the fountain clean.
I think any kind of idea that would be beneficial, we should look at to utilize those odd pieces of property, if you will.
Okay, I think we have a consensus, and
I just want to offer something else, if I can interrupt here. No one's mentioned anything about areas, and when we were forced out of our house for a while, we lived at Captain Hiram's, and I walked the dog a lot. And I walked the dog a lot on the sidewalk there, and I was looking with that in mind. And there's a couple of, well, actually 4 spots that I identified that I thought might work, but again, it depends on the people who own it. The one I thought had the most potential was right next to Captain Hiram's. There's in Oyster Point. There's a tennis court there now, but that might offer a courtyard type setting or a gathering area if they would want to give it up. But again, there you've got an owner involved. That was the first area I thought of. The other area was further north by Squid Lips, and that's there's 3 parcels there that basically is green space right now. It's not marshy, but that's definitely a possibility, and it's not being used for parking either. And that's just would be just south of the parking lot that Squid Lips uses there. The third area was across from, well, that would be, sort of across from Earl's, but more toward Mobe Grill, that area in there, which does kind of come close to the city parking area, which would solve one of the concerns of, parking. Where do people park? But that might be a starting point if people park there. But then we have to be careful because we have only 2 spots in that area for, single cars. The rest are all boats and trailers, or trucks and trailers. But that area, looking at the land, I thought there was enough. There are mangroves there, but I looked and there was enough shoreline there that might work also. And the fourth area I came up with was north of Squid Lips. Is that Harrison's? No, that's not Harrison Street. The street that's a double street actually comes close to where Captain Butcher's is. Jackson. Yes, that's it. That area, because it's kind of, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, not much of anything. And then, of course, that platform is there. And I've not been here long enough to know what that concrete platform was there for.
That's right next to Squid Lips. That's not up by Captain Butcher's.
no, and I know
That's over by Finn's Marina.
Okay. Yeah, but I didn't, you're right, that's further up. Butcher's.
Is that platform still a church, Dory?
I don't think that one ever was.
No, it was always,
I think you're thinking of south of that.
It was supposed to be a developer, it was part of a developer's agreement that's null and void at this point. It has been a concrete block of contention, but we are working with the Squid Lips owner. He has brought in a site plan. It was incomplete. We're waiting for a few architectural details and plans, but they do have plans for that concrete. That it'll come before you in a few months.
Well, that's good. This was right north of that, but I thought that, not knowing what was happening with it, that might be.
Sounds like the bed and breakfast that was being designed by Mr. Kissenbach.
Yeah, but see, those areas have what I call drawing cards nearby. A restaurant, parking area, another has a restaurant. Matter of fact, they all 4 do. There are restaurants nearby, so, there you go, you go out, have a meal, then you go for a walk, and, it creates an atmosphere, and over time, it builds. That's what I was looking at in it, so it's...
One of the sites I looked at along the waterfront is, I believe it's right across from the Chamber of Commerce. adjacent to our Main Street boat ramp there. That vacant piece of property is a good-sized piece of property. Is it owned by the hotel across the street,
Yes.
I believe? So they definitely have a nice-sized piece of property there, but I think they should turn that whole area into a park kiosk. I mean, a park for kiosks where you come visit, you come put your boat ramp in, you got little stores there, you can buy stuff. There, you know, it's perfect. So.
Well, that was, I think, one of the considerations that Mr. Dodd or City Council also wanted to, is a situation like that where there is property on the east side, but developable for sale property right now on the west side. Would we put some sort of incentives to say, if you don't build a two-story building over there, put your parking, put a gazebo, maybe your swimming pool, and keep that open view, that we would give you some sort of incentive and some sort of break, maybe additional, less landscaping or more impervious or something on that west side to incentivize that you keep that open view. That was something that was also, I felt was what they were asking us to consider also.
Yeah, they did.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything, Darren? No?
No, I see it, as far as what I could see. I mean, what does he basically want us to change? The zonings, or because?
Not to change it, but to look at it. And I think we're looking.
Yeah, we are. To me, it seemed fine. I mean, I don't know.
Hey. I think we've pretty well covered it. You have your marching orders.
If I may, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Our marching
Welcome to the
orders.
community.
Is there a time frame that's attached to this, or
Yesterday.
I'm blocking you, Bill.
next month? And also, if you would allow us the time to think about that, I mean, how much we could accomplish and what the time frame may be, but one thing that you might want to consider also is that come October 1st, as part of the CIP, is to update the CRA master plan, and this area is within the CRA. So we may be able to roll some of that into it.
What do you think if we ask for a report back in 60 days? Is that not long enough, or do you want 90 days?
Again, it's my fourth day, so forgive me. I would have to really defer to Dory, and if you would allow us to maybe mull that over and get back with you.
Come back when you're ready.
That's fine.
Well, that could be 5 years from now. No.
Yeah, right now. Not 5 years.
Yes, okay.
Does it make sense to just, on every meeting, just say, here's where we're at, this is what we talked about, type of thing, so that there's no time frame, and then that'll help us figure out, where it's at, so that it's moving along. Maybe just to give an input.
When's your next anticipated meeting, Dory?
I have not run any ads for the October 5th, so there's no site plan. And since you requested us to do this study, I don't foresee us having a meeting October 5th. So that's October 19th, meetings in November. Earliest would be October 19th. I think November is probably when we're probably going to have some more.
Okay.
I do have some site plans that I'm working on, just nothing quite ready yet to bring before the board for a hearing.
In all likelihood, November then, right?
I think is the question, when do you anticipate another site plan coming before the board?
Oh,
And then the board
yes.
having to meet? And then at that next meeting, we could have something for you, absolutely.
Well, I was anticipating what you and Dory were going to be thinking about, so you can update us on at that next meeting, which is almost a month away, over a month away.
Absolutely. I
And
don't
worst
see a
case
problem
scenario,
with that.
We certainly can email you an update.
Okay,
If we
that's
find
fine.
out we're not having a meeting in the next month or so, we can email you an update.
Great. That's great.
Site plan, early learning center for Rosen Road.
Yes, that is one that we have reviews, and we have a few that we're working on. I've got 3 or 4 site plans in.
Okay, I'm going to move right along on our agenda then. We have no public here, so we have no public input tonight. New business?
Can you just go ahead and solicit for it, just to make sure?
I'm sorry?
Just go ahead and solicit for it, if you don't mind. If there's anyone from the public who would wish to comment? Okay, thanks.
Is there anyone here from the public who would like to speak? Hearing none, We'll move on to new business when we don't have any scheduled new business here. City Attorney's matters.
I don't have anything formal to report. I just want to thank you. This has been a learning experience for me too, so I appreciate your patience with some of my word stumbling. Thanks.
Okay, staff matters?
That I have?
Okay.
I'll just add, welcome to Lisa. Yes.
Commissioners matters.
I have a question.
I have.
I do too.
Staff, have we had any requests for medical marijuana pharmacy or dispensaries?
I have due diligence calls that come in, and as Lisa was updating me today from a seminar that she went to, there are only going to be a certain, and actually, if you want to go into that with them.
Absolutely. I actually was one of the host committee for the recent APA state conference that was held in Daytona Beach that Dory attended, and of course I was there. And I hung out until the very last minute and on Thursday to attend the medical marijuana legal course that was there, about an hour and a half. And I was just trying to update from my notes to Cynthia and to Dory today. The state is really maintaining the regulation on that. And they have, through their statute, come up with that there's only going to be 17 licensed medical marijuana growers allowed in the state of Florida, and these medical marijuana, and there's a real name for it, and I wish I had my notes, I'm sorry. It's a vertical thing, so there's only going to be 17 licensed, and they are the growers, the producers, and the distributors. And of those 17 that get licensed, they each will be allowed 25 dispensaries. So after several moments of flustering around our math without a calculator, that's less than 500 dispensaries in the state of Florida. So it'll be interesting to see what happens from that. We can only, in our code, we can do the certain land development codes for it, but not for the manufacturing or distribution centers. So, for instance, Lake Wales has one of those 17 not dispensaries, but the growers, packagers, producers, and they came into their industrial zoning area around the airport. And the gentleman was there and from Lake Wales saying, you know, it's actually been fine working with these growers. They're very professional, and they're doing a good job, and it's in the industrial zoning area. But we really have no regulatory, what's the word I'm looking for? We cannot regulate those areas. We can only regulate where the dispensaries are.
And I think we've established that.
Yes.
I don't want to regulate.
To follow up though with the Senate bill, we made them conditional uses, and the Senate bill, the governing law has said that we have to allow them in the same places that pharmacies.
Correct.
There's a state requirement of being 500 feet from school. We're still going to allow them. We just need to revise and adjust our current ordinance that we passed to meet the state bill, and that will be coming back before you to just adjust our land development code wording. Okay. And you'll see that.
That was sort of my question. Was it going to have to be revised? And
yes.
You answered that.
I'm curious, there's going to be doctors giving the cards out. Is that going to be something that they're going to regulate also? Okay. Commissioner comments. The city did a great job during this storm. I was concerned about the drainage swales prior to the storm. I brought it up at one of my meetings, and I was shocked on how fast these swales were mowed. Whoever did the mowing needs to stay on that job. Awesome job. They're already back up, so let's get them mowed again. So there's like a Jamaica grass growing in these swales that grows very fast. I'm sure that the engineers have looked at all that, but great job. Cleanup efforts right away, immediately. Last time, I think it took months before they started coming around. I couldn't put my stuff out fast enough for them to pick it up. I had to bring it over to the dump myself, so. Great job city did on this storm.
From a meeting this morning, there is going to be, in about 2 or 3 weeks, they are going to do a second pass.
Oh,
I got it all cleaned up. I hope some of the other residents do it on their own also, so, thank you.
okay. I do have something that I'd like to bring up, and that is, as Lisa mentioned, tiny houses. I would like us to look at tiny houses, where they might be appropriately put. Should they be clustered? Should we have them? If we do, I know that DeLand has them, and I know that Daytona, not Daytona, maybe it is Daytona, but a number of cities in Florida have already gotten into establishing that. And again, you guys know that I do tend to think outside the box, and I have been thinking that for many of the people who work here, housing in Sebastian is becoming rapidly unaffordable. For many of our elderly residents, maintaining a house that is, and property that is what we demand is beyond the ability of some people, but they would still like to have their own place. And I think that this can be done, and I think it can be done beautifully. They don't have to be tacky trailers. They can be very well built. I've spent a lot of time looking at some of those options, and I would like us as a city to look at that as well.
I've had a few calls on those. There's nothing in our code that prohibits those except for the zoning districts all have minimum sizes. And so when they call the RS10, they go, what's the minimum size? It's 1,200 under air plus a one-car garage, so 1,400 square feet. That's the only thing prohibiting them to go into any of the different zoning district minimum sizes. So that's what you would need to consider in what zoning districts we may want to lower that.
And I think that's what I'm saying. And I think that we could possibly do that in pods or clusters or whatever. But what I was really thinking about is the first house that I owned was built in 1945 when the servicemen were coming back. It was 514 square feet, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, just a snug, delightful little house that was perfect for my husband and I and our baby. And it lasted us for about 7 years, and then we sold it and moved. We sold it to an elderly lady who moved into it, and she was just as snug as a bug in a rug as well. And that house is still standing, and it is still just as cute as a bug's ear. It's been there since 1945. There isn't any reason why smaller homes could not also fit in our community. And they were affordable for a young person, and I think it's an option that we should be looking at. The only thing that we've done, I believe, in Sebastian with affordable housing is the apartment complex. And I believe...
And Grace's Landing.
And Grace's Landing, which you can't get into because there's a waiting list forever. You have to wait for someone to die. Yeah, very sad. But I do think that we have a mandate to provide affordable housing, which we've kind of ignored year after year after year. So I'd like us to look at it. And I'd like us to look at it. Maybe you can get some of how DeLand and Daytona, and I think maybe Sarasota. Is that?
We'll also look at our policies in the comp plan on affordable housing. We'll review the comp plan, pull out our policies on affordable housing.
What would be the minimum size allowed? Say you had a dual lot property and you wanted to put like an in-laws quarter there, a little house. It still has to.
Currently, you're not allowed to.
You're not allowed to? Oh, sorry. I'm not doing, trust me, I'm not doing it.
Which, that I can say that
shouldn't have said
more
that.
calls than the tiny housing. I have so many people call about the in-law houses on a double lot. And we look at that as a separate living unit, and this is single-family zoning. We do have a couple of the zoning districts that allow guest houses as conditional uses, but that is actually something that I think we should also explore as alternative, as people are living older and want to bring their in-laws. Do we maybe want to allow? It turns out that after they're not being used as taking care of mom and dad, they turn into rentals and apartments, so that's something we'd have to explore. But I get a lot of calls on in-law apartments on what they can do, either on a single lot, they turn the garage into that, or I have a double lot, can I build an in-law apartment for, I need to bring my mom and dad down from up north and take care of them, so.
And you know, a rental house isn't a bad thing, it's housing. Lots of people rent. It's respectable.
One other, I'm curious if you get calls for these. I know Ms. Kaltenberg's against them because I heard her years ago in one of the meetings bring it up. Over in Sarasota, there was a neighborhood built using storage containers that have been turned into homes, and it's affordable housing. Do you get any of those requests here to build homes out of storage containers?
We had a couple, two, container housing, and we were going to bring container housing also to City Council to see if they wanted us to send it back to you to consider. We pulled up some to see exactly what container housing was. It seemed that half of them left them as containers, painted them, you could still see the ribbing. Then they used the containers as the initial structure and then still put on alternative siding or, siding and stucco and all, so you couldn't tell it was a container.
It's changed a lot.
But I have not had a lot of
It's changed a
containers.
And I'm
lot.
not against them anymore.
I haven't had too
Oh,
many
you're not
calls.
against them
No,
anymore,
if
sorry.
they dress them up, I'm not against them.
They dress them up, I mean, and it's affordable.
I haven't too many calls on that, just at one time, and we were gonna bring it to City Council, we just never had any more calls. It didn't go anywhere.
Thank
But
you.
I know, as you've mentioned, that there is a need for smaller housing. And there will continue to be a growing need for it. I'm beginning to have to hire people to do almost everything at my house.
You haven't called me.
Do you want to take down some of my shutters?
Tiny houses.
Okay.
That's what's in there.
Anybody else have anything?
Yes, I do.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I want a couple of items here. One on the Barber Street sales. I think that guy 1673, he moved out. So that's good. We took care of that one. There's one on 18-something where now I saw he's got the car, but the little lettering in white. So I can't, but I think it's 1879 or something. But anyhow, it's just much better. Also, on another note, has to do with the Airbnb and these rentals situations now that we have going on in the country. And I just got hit, and I think I told you the other day, across the street, they just sold a house, and guess what? I got a rental situation going on there. And, it's a two-way, it's a two-sided sword or blade here because, yeah, it's good in the sense that if the city goes ahead and start taxing these individuals, like you had mentioned, because of the being bed tax or whatever, that's fine. But what about us, the homeowners around the area? To us, that's very detrimental in the sense that, it's not a seasonal rental anymore, or it's not a one-year rental. It's literally every day. Because the other day, we just had that situation. And I think I had called you prior to that, and I have it written down in my calendar, everybody that's moving in there. And it was a situation on a weekend thing. They go in, go out. You don't know who they are, whatever. They can stake the neighborhood or whatever, and it's right online. It's $200 a night. That's one thing. The other thing is that if that's going to be a problem, where it's going to, and you had not mentioned yet, it's not a problem, but to me, being in real estate for over 20-something years, to me, that's considered external obsolescence, meaning that if I'm going to have, a hotel across the street from me, I'm going to go to the county and have my taxes reduced. And not only me, it's going to be the whole neighborhood. And where you think that the county's going to make money by taxing these people on a bed tax, on the other side of the coin is they're going to bring down the property values, and they're going to, I'm sure, they're going to, ask for a credit tax break because of that being, the situation. So I know right now there's no regulation, but eventually it's going to happen, and it's going to be, because I know one, as a matter of fact, there's a friend of mine that right around the corner for years now, they've had that situation. And he tells me, Al, at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, they're out there in the pool making all kinds of noises. And it's every week, different people. I'm surprised they haven't done anything because a lot of people don't know how to come about it. But, it's something to consider later on. And I know nobody's complained because, again, maybe they don't know or how to. But coming on my end, and that guy got the wrong house to do that. And it's right across my house. And it's not going to, to this point, fine and dandy, he already has some bookings in December. We already checked them out. Some bookings in December, some of them in January and February. But he just bought that at a $255,000 piece of property. He's going to have at least an $1,800 mortgage on that. So to come up with $1,800, you're going to have to rent that, substantially, at least more than one a week, or more than once a month, weekly. It's going to have to be, and he's charging $200 a night, right on the internet. So that's what, $6,000 a month? So that's just my thought. And it's just recorded, and it's going to be right now, hopefully, but there is happening. And, again, one part is good because if you guys think, okay, we're going to tax them, fine. But the other part is that I'm going to be the first one. I'm going to go to the county and ask for my tax reduction because it is an external obsolescence. That's all I have to say. And it's a shame but.
I think as it stands right now, we don't have any.
Yeah, I know we don't.
However, if there's anything going on there that disturbs your peace, call the police.
No, I understand that. No, that's fine and dandy. I understand. It's just a point where, now people are making money, okay, out of somewhere is residential. That's to me, that belongs more in the beach area, things where there are hotels but
I believe there are some state law limitations on a locality's ability to regulate short-term rentals. I apologize, I don't know the specifics of that law currently. It's been in the news quite a lot, however.
It has.
And so I can research that law more specifically and get back to you, but I believe what the municipality can do regarding the regulation of short-term rentals is limited. Again, I don't want to opine on something I don't know, but I believe the state may claim preemption on that. And so I'll look into that.
Please. Okay? I don't want to, take any business from anybody, but however, there are families there, and when they don't screen these people. Like if you're going to live there for a year or something, it's like, okay, give me the money, boom, you're in there.
And I'll also echo that there's so much precedence that has been set. Towns have, totally outlawed it, that you cannot have short-term rental, or they've set 30 days as a minimum or 6 months as a minimum in specific areas. But Cynthia is correct that the state is trying to preempt it and come up with their own standards. I think it was turned down this last legislative session, but that doesn't.
Because here, the customary, we have, for example, seasonal 4 months, and they do it every year. So you get to see the same person every year, kind of. But 4 months, at least but you got a car, the guy just showed up, 3 days later, you got another car, 4 days, it's like, whoa.
Well, the positive side of that, Al, is you could have a full-time resident who's a real thorn in your side, and you'd just be stuck with him forever.
Right. I got one of those.
Instead of just a couple of weeks.
But that's all I have to say about that this evening.
Anybody else? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.